Hi, my name is Frank Salvador, and this is my negative speech manuscript. Healthcare reform is no longer an unmet promise. It is the law of the land. Barack Obama, March 2010. Because I agree with Obama about healthcare reform being available for everyone, I must negate the affirmative opposition that Obamacare will not impact the way health insurance works. First, I decided to remind you of the affirmative argument. Then, I will explain why the status quo would help resolve the affirmative ill. Then, I will establish the costs and disadvantages of the affirmative's cure. First, allow me to remind you the affirmative's previous argument. The affirmative's ill was about how a free healthcare system would be beneficial towards many classes of lower income people. Yet, we established how this could negatively affect the economical system and its drawbacks of providing everyone with a free healthcare system, as we no longer have existing free healthcare today, or we never did, as a matter of fact. Research shows that repeatedly that we, the people of the middle to lower class, have no to little healthcare. In 2020, roughly 8.6% of the population, that is 28 million people, were recorded to have no healthcare available to them, and approximately 30 million in the United States are uninsured and at risk of financial ruin if they become ill or injured. Worse, there are approximately 9 million uninsured children in the country. That's about 1 out of every 10 children in the United States. Now that you know of the affirmative's ill, I will now explain how the status quo is working to resolve the problem. The status quo of the ACA, Affordable Health Care Act, is working to resolve the problem of poverty and healthcare necessities towards Americans living in the United States. Although the government have a 1-year delay to those who are already insured before the ACA was instituted and it became law, they can still be fined unless they get an early renewal to disburse their previous healthcare association. The status quo is also discussed about how the Affordable Health Care Act would help those living with low income and poverty situations. As through the status quo itself, it can be beneficial to help people who are uninsured in order to gain the necessary info to go on further in their lives with insured health insurance. According to FastStats, the number of adults aged 18 through 64 uninsured at the time of this interview was 13.5%, located under the health coverage tab. The status quo has enough information to say that the pros outweigh the cons, as the cons only affect small-time businesses and taxes. Although in previous years the taxes were not as high as they suddenly are now due to recent events, for example, Ukraine and Russia. Higher levels of money have been raised and have infected us entirely. So the benefits that are affordable throughout the Healthcare Act can make families be more at ease. Based off of FastStats, the percentage of students aged 5 to 11 years who are in poor health is 1.8%. As of 2021, while these aren't the worst rates, many would argue that children shouldn't live in those conditions of poverty without being fully covered or insured. Although it would work to solve most of the problems presented by the Healthcare Act, it wouldn't be able to solve all the problems. In addition, I will now lastly discuss the costs and disadvantages of my affirmative's cure. The cure is problematic because the free healthcare for everyone would cause a rise in inflation, as shown by the higher European countries. As there is no health insurance, they would tax at a higher, larger amount as a whole nation, yet are provided with a free healthcare system. But it almost seems as if economically its impact on the governmental system wouldn't change, as the government would still find a way to create a new funding through their services, through taxes, through higher inflation rate, creating a disadvantage. One of the costs of the cure would be the amount of uninsured Americans that have no beneficial health services or could not be able to get healthcare insurance under the ACA. Another cost toward the cure of the affirmative would be the fines that take effect if potential healthcare insurance consumers do not renew their previous healthcare insurance before the 1-year mark. As of 2011, they will be fined and generally exposed to more damaging businesses. A counter to the cure would be that not many people agree that the Affordable Health Care Act made it seem that if you had no choice but to fall under the ACA, many would argue that it felt necessarily forced. But necessarily, as of March 6, 2014, they extended to a 2-year grace period. In order to be able to keep up with unrelated insurance coverages made by those before the Obamacare Act came into play. The affirmative noted that free healthcare reform should be provided to low-income, lower poverty status people in order to be fully beneficial to those who do not have healthcare services as of March 23, 2010. The Obama Healthcare Act, also known as the Affordable Healthcare Act, became a law and took place in order to provide expansion for medical aid. Rising evidence to support this is the fact that our inflation rate has drastically risen since 2010, and although Obamacare isn't fully to blame, or the ACA is not fully responsible for this, Obama's presidency was over since 2017. It therefore began a domino effect of rising taxes towards out distribution of networks, and has since then affected the economy and its tax rates. The affirmatives also discussed the drawbacks of a higher to lower income quality for those suffering from poverty within families and their children's poverty rates. Statistics to support this from FastStats suggest that American adults who fail to obtain needed medical care due to cost is a whopping 6.3%. The status quo of free, affordable health care would fix this. Evidence for this cause can be found from eHealth March 2014 news article. New York Times reports that the U.S. Census Bureau did not have the authoritative health of source insurance of data in order to change its health insurance survey, meaning the results weren't very accurate. They had a low reliability during that time, yet many found sustainability throughout the ACA. Healthcare in other countries, for example, with healthcare benefits like Canada, Japan, and most European countries, have access to universal healthcare. According to the short article by the Commonwealth Fund, Shinor Sirbai, Robin Osborne, and Anaviz Shah indicate how they manipulated the tax system to provide free healthcare towards their people, and by them, they're of course referring to the government. Towards people and how they gain access to the universal coverage. A bipartisan effort is currently underway in Congress to reinforce the ACA marketplaces, so more people can gain affordable insurance. But some policymakers are proposing alternate paths to universal coverage, such as a single-payer system in which the government provides coverage financed by taxes. Located on page 1. Now that I have established the cost, let me finally conclude my negation. First, I decided to remind you of the affirmative argument, and then I explained why the status quo would help resolve the ill. Then I established the cost and disadvantages of the affirmative cure. Hence, the ACA will continue to work on taking care of most of the problems that come from the affirmative ill, yet is constantly working to permanently resolve these problems that would rise from a free healthcare system, as it hasn't fully resolved them all. And to close off my speech, don't you think healthcare should be a promise kept to those who really need it? And then my work cited. Thank you.